As we turn the pages of history, we find ourselves at a crucial juncture: the emergence of a figure who would leave an indelible mark on China's political landscape, Mao Zedong. Mao's ascent to power began in the tumultuous years of the Republican era, when China was fragmented by warlordism and foreign incursions. After the foundation of the Communist Party of China in 1921, Mao gradually rose through the ranks, showcasing his prowess as a leader during the Long March of 1934-35, a strategic retreat which cemented his role as the linchpin of the party. The early years of the Communist Party were fraught with challenges, as they found themselves in a bitter struggle against the ruling Kuomintang, led by Chiang Kai-shek. Through relentless guerrilla warfare and mass mobilization, Mao and his communist forces gained control of vast rural areas, laying the groundwork for revolutionary change. The victory in 1949 was a pivotal moment, establishing the People's Republic of China, with Mao Zedong at its helm as the nation's paramount leader. The prelude to the Cultural Revolution commenced in the 1950s and early 60s with the Great Leap Forward, Mao's ambitious but ill-fated campaign to rapidly transform China from an agrarian economy into a socialist society through rapid industrialization and collectivization. This resulted in a devastating famine and a significant loss of life, shaking the faith in Mao's leadership among some Communist Party members and the general populace. However, Mao perceived the emerging critiques not as a moment for reflection, but as a threat to his vision for China. These internal rifts set the stage for what would become the Cultural Revolution. Mao feared the ossification of the Communist Party and believed that continual revolution was necessary to keep the spirit of communism alive. He envisioned a society that would forever remain true to its revolutionary roots, where class struggle was ongoing and where the old customs, culture, habits, and ideas, known as the Four Olds, would be completely overthrown. In this climate of ideological fervor, the groundwork was laid for one of history's most radical social experiments. Mao Zedong's vision for China was not merely political, but cultural and social at its core. He believed that for the revolution to be truly successful, it had to permeate every aspect of society. The Cultural Revolution, initiated in 1966, aimed to enforce communism by removing capitalist, traditional, and cultural elements from Chinese society. It sought to impose Maoist orthodoxy within the party and across the nation. The goals of the Cultural Revolution were ambitious. Mao intended to revitalize the communist spirit, which he felt was waning in the face of bureaucracy and elitism within the party. He called for the nation, especially the youth, to rise up and challenge authority, to actively engage in class struggle, and to dismantle the so-called Four Olds: old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas. Mao's call to action was intended to create a society of perpetual revolution, constantly advancing towards the communist ideal. This period was marked by a significant emphasis on class struggle. Mao promoted the idea of continuous revolution and believed that this struggle against perceived bourgeois elements would prevent the ossification of the Communist Party and the state. This led to an array of social campaigns designed to root out the Four Olds. Books were burned, museums ransacked, and historical sites destroyed in an attempt to erase past feudal cultures and traditions. Intellectuals and those with ties to old ways of thinking were publicly humiliated or worse. The intent was not just to transform the society, but to forge a new type of Chinese person, unburdened by the shackles of the past and ideologically aligned with the party's revolutionary ethos. The Cultural Revolution, hailing from the mid-1960s, witnessed an unprecedented sweep of mass mobilization, spearheaded by Mao Zedong himself. It was during this time that the Red Guards, a fervent youth movement, were formed. Primarily consisting of high school and university students, they rose as a radical force, united by their devotion to Chairman Mao and his revolutionary ideology. As the Red Guards surged in numbers, their influence expanded beyond campuses to the wider society, becoming the catalyst for a series of purges. These purges were indiscriminate and unforgiving, targeting intellectuals, party officials, and anyone branded as a class enemy. With Mao's backing, the Red Guards were emboldened to carry out struggle sessions, public humiliations where the accused were forced to confess to their so-called crimes against the revolution. The Cultural Revolution's frenzy did not spare even the cornerstones of tradition and culture. Historic artifacts, ancient texts, and relics were destroyed in an attempt to erase the four olds: old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas. This chaos was not just confined to urban areas. In rural regions, too, millions were either active participants or caught in the tide of the movement, leading to social, cultural, and personal turmoil that would scar Chinese society for years to come. As the fires of the Cultural Revolution blazed across China, the very fabric of society found itself unraveling thread by thread. Education, culture, and the economy all were engulfed by the fervent flames of transformation mandated by Chairman Mao. It was a revolution that promised rebirth but delivered disruption on a seismic scale. In the pursuit of purifying the educational realm, schools became battlegrounds for ideology over intellectualism. Teachers, once revered as keepers of knowledge, were now denounced and often subjected to brutal public humiliations. Universities shut their doors, halting the academic progress of an entire generation. The meritocratic fabric that had underpinned scholarly achievement was torn apart, replaced by a system where allegiance to the party's cause was the only passport to advancement. The attack on culture was devastating in its totality. Art, literature, and historical artifacts that did not align with the party's vision were destroyed or defaced. Ancient temples, books, and antiques, pillars of a civilization stretching back millennia, were cast into the bonfires of ideological fervor. In its wake, the Cultural Revolution left a gaping void in the soul of the Chinese heritage, one that could not be easily mended or restored. Then, the economy too trembled under the weight of widespread chaos. As the youth of the nation swelled the ranks of the Red Guards and turned their backs on rural toil and urban industry, production faltered. The very engine of progress sputtered as people, caught in the tumult, could no longer perform their duties, whether out of fear or fervent conviction. Factories idled, crops remained unharvested, and the promise of a prosperous future was sacrificed at the altar of revolution. But beyond these broad strokes of upheaval lay a deeply human cost. Intellectual oppression was not merely a suppression of thought, it was a suffocation of freedom, a decimation of identity. Each session of struggle, each denouncement, and each act of forced confession tore at the psyche of individuals who had dared to dream or dared to question. And those who weathered the storm found themselves steeped in a silence born from survival, a quietude that blanketed a landscape of lost dreams and forsaken aspirations. The ripples of this societal upheaval would be felt long after the last echo of revolution faded. Its legacy, a complex tapestry of destroyed lives, altered trajectories, and a resilient spirit that, despite all odds, would endeavor to rise once more. As the Cultural Revolution reached its tumultuous end in 1976, China was left reeling from a decade of fervent ideological campaigns, widespread chaos, and societal strife. With the death of Mao Zedong that same year, the country was poised for a period of reconstruction and healing, one which necessitated a careful examination of the past to forge a new path forward. Mao's successors faced the daunting task of stabilizing a nation scarred by the Cultural Revolution's extreme policies. The subsequent years saw the Communist Party, under the leadership of figures like Deng Xiaoping, shift focus from class struggle to economic development. In what became known as the Reform and Opening Up policy initiated in the late 1970s, China began to introduce market-oriented reforms and encouraged foreign investment, setting the stage for its remarkable economic rise. These reforms were a clear departure from the strictly controlled economic principles that had dominated Mao's era. As China embarked on this journey of transformation, the legacy of the Cultural Revolution continued to cast a long shadow over its society and governance. The decade-long upheaval had resulted in the loss of educational and cultural capital and left deep psychological scars on an entire generation. Subsequent Chinese leadership has downplayed the Cultural Revolution, often portraying it as a 10-year catastrophe, and have made efforts to ensure such an event never occurs again, emphasizing stability and economic growth over revolutionary zeal. In contemporary China, the Cultural Revolution remains a sensitive topic, with the government controlling the narrative and limiting public discussion. Despite this, its influence persists, manifesting in various aspects of Chinese life, from policy decisions to collective memory. Today, as the nation continues to emerge as a global power, reflections on the Cultural Revolution's lasting effects provide crucial insights into understanding China's complex identity and its continued pursuit of modernization, balanced with a unique socialist legacy. As we reach the conclusion of today's discussion, it's essential to distill the essence of what the Cultural Revolution represented for China. It was a period, beginning in 1966 and lasting until 1976, of unprecedented upheaval with Mao Zedong at its helm, striving to perpetuate his ideologies and maintain an iron grip on the Communist Party. We witnessed a nation gripped by the fervor to eliminate the four olds, old customs, culture, habits, and ideas, as hordes of young Red Guards sought to mold a society that embodied the values of the revolution, often with tragic consequences. Understanding the Cultural Revolution is not just an exercise of historical curiosity, it's a gateway to comprehending the China of today and tomorrow. This decade-long phase reshaped the political, social, and cultural fabric of the nation, unleashing changes that would send ripples through time, influencing policy and governance, particularly after Mao's demise in 1976. The measures to distance the state from the extreme ideologies of the past and chart a new course have, to this day, left an indelible mark on Chinese society. Let us take a moment to reflect on the broader human lessons this historical episode teaches us. Through the lens of the Cultural Revolution, we learn about the power of ideology and the consequences of extreme societal upheaval. It stands as a stark reminder of the potential for human suffering when cultural and intellectual freedoms are suppressed. It teaches us about resilience and recovery. It's important to learn from the past, not only to avoid past mistakes, but to also inspire our resolve to build a more harmonious future. As we contemplate the vast tapestry of human history, let's strive to take these lessons to heart and seek understanding, empathy, and wisdom in our lives and in the world around us. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through one of history's most dramatic chapters. Remember to subscribe to the Daily History Podcast for more dives into our past. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's topic, so leave your comments below. If you have suggestions for future episodes, don't hesitate to share them. The one with the most likes stands a good chance of being our next deep dive. Until next time, keep the wheels of history turning.